Hello and welcome back today. I'm very excited for today's video. We have Kerry from over at Homestead How. Kerry, I actually owe a lot to Kerry. He helped me get started on this journey. He did an interview with me over there and it was really well received. And Kerry's been completely awesome. I've been following him for a very long time. He's a big carnivore diet supporter. It's actually made a huge difference in his life. And I want to hear all about it today. Our channel here, we're always talking about cancer and all the, GKI and neuropathy and all these other issues. But it's extremely important to get your GKI in order. And I had just recorded a video earlier today that I uploaded, and my GKI was out of whack. And that was even with eating high fat meat, and that usually drives it way down, but it's the treatments that we're always trying to fight. And so Kerry's got lots of great ideas on carnivore diet. He's going to explain to us the process, hopefully, of switching over, all the benefits he received. And when you're trying to get your GKI low, honestly, trying to do this multiple times, the best way to start is to go right to a good carnivore diet, even if it's just temporary, and testing your GKI and going from there. As Professor Seafried pounds on us, GKI is everything in metabolic therapy. So Kerry, if you want to introduce yourself and take her away from there.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so my name's Kerry. I've been carnivore now for I think like 420 days, a little bit over a year. And I didn't start carnivore because of cancer, although I had skin cancer at one point. I've lost several family members, too many family members to cancer. But I started carnivore diet because I was 100 pounds heavier than I am today. So I was severely obese. I had sleep apnea. I was diagnosed with IBS. Man, Jason, this list goes on, but I had a lot of stuff wrong with me. My appendix burst. I almost died. I had my gallbladder removed. A couple of years ago, about 8 years ago, I kind of collapsed in the house here, and I had a TIA mini stroke. And then after that, I was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. My heart wasn't keeping up with the needs of my body. All of those things kind of sucked, right? But the worst of it for me was just depression and anxiety. Most of my adult life, 15, 20 years, I was depressed. I think for about 10 years, I was on every SSRI medication for both depression, anxiety. Then they gave me stuff for sleep. Those pills didn't work. They'd up the dosage. They changed the dosage. And for like 10 years, I was just on a cascade of SSRIs and antidepressant medications. And I heard about the carnivore diet helping with many of those things I just listed. And I saw a YouTube video of a guy that was doing it. And so I had known about the ketogenic diet. I tested that many years ago. I learned about it through a documentary on Netflix. And I tested the ketogenic diet. It was the only thing my entire life that helped with my depression and anxiety. It didn't cure it. It didn't fix it, but it was noticeable. Like, whoa, this is doing more than all this crazy medication they put me on when I'm doing a deep ketogenic diet. My problem with keto was I just could never maintain it because I've realized I'm a sugar addict, and I've realized I'm addicted to the standard American diet. And I would always I would abstain from those things, and I'd lose a bunch of weight doing keto. And then I'd be like, oh, now I can go back to moderation. And I'd usually do it pretty clean. Like I'm going to have some raspberries or some strawberries, but my body would get a little taste of sugar. And a lot of people don't realize if it says carbs, your body turns that into glucose. It's like, it's all, and when I hear carbs in my brain, I'm like, it's sugar. It's just like eating table sugar or cereal. There's sugar in everything. So I would eat a little bit of sugar. I'd try to go back into moderation on keto, and I'd gain all my weight back. And so I yo-yo dieted for about 10 years, like lost and gained so much weight over and over again. But it wasn't until I found carnivore diet a little over 400 days ago that it just changed everything for me. It was crazy. It was insane. Like within the first week, I stopped snoring. I had the CPAP machine on strapped to my face. It was miserable for years and years. Like I'd gasp for air throughout the night, and I just stopped snoring within a week. And my doctors told me, listen, dude, you're kind of fat. You got to lose like 80 pounds and then you'll stop snoring. Your neck's fat. Like you got all this body fat. That's why you're snoring. That wasn't true. I was snoring from inflammation from the foods I was eating. The tongue gets inflamed. The throat gets inflamed. Many people, not all, but many people snore from inflammation. And then inflammation I had in my back. Like, Jason, I had this lower back pain for like 20 years. I was like, when I was younger, I must have thrown my back out. I did something stupid. I lifted weird. I'm going to have this the rest of my life. It wasn't until I went carnivore, it just washed away. And I was like, oh my God. That was just, I realized after the fact that too was from inflammation from the foods I was eating. And then my depression and anxiety started to taper down a little bit. That took a little bit while longer. My IBS went away. Like before this, I did a long stretch of like a year, strict keto, eating like a salad for lunch, salad for dinner, low carb, a little bit of chicken. And my stomach was gurgling and bubbling, and I was farting like 500 times a day. Like it was just horrible. And that just went away on carnivore. Like within a couple of weeks, I'm like, my stomach doesn't hurt anymore. I feel like this light feeling I've never felt before in my stomach. I've always had this pressure or pain. And yeah, so all these things happen for me very quickly. And around day 30, the name of my channel, as Jason mentions, Homestead How. We have a homestead. I live on 20 acres. We got chickens and goats. I've been doing YouTube videos for 8 or 9 years about chickens and goats and building greenhouses. And so on my 30 days of carnivore, I'm like, this is incredible what's happening. I'm just going to do one video talking about my 30-day carnivore update. I put that video out, and it kind of went viral. It went nuts, which was great. Like awesome. I get a bunch of views, but more importantly, so many people telling me I did the same thing as you, Kerry, and I overcame depression. I overcame anxiety. All of these health issues. I started hearing people. And then I don't know how this happened, but I started getting a lot of like elderly folks in their 60s, 70s, and 80s that have been doing this for years because I think they watched Dr. Barry's videos or one of these other carnivore doctors, and they're just thriving. And that really, I don't know, touched my heart. I'm like, this is amazing. Like my parents are elderly, and a lot of people I see that hit retirement age, they're suffering. They have mobility issues. They have arthritis. They work their whole lives, sometimes 2 jobs to retire, and then they're just miserable and they're in a bed with aches and pains and stuff. And I started hearing these stories from other people. So I became quite passionate about it from that point forward. I did a lot more videos. I started interviewing all of these good doctors, Dr. Barry, Dr. Chafee. I met our shared friend, Jason and I, Jeff DeProsperous, who told me, hey, I'm doing carnivore. I have stage 4 cancer. I was told I'm inoperable, incurable. And the interesting thing with Jeff was he was doing chemo before he found carnivore. He was on the standard American diet, and he was having a hell of a time with it. He was getting sick and stomach aches and fatigue and all the stuff that you hear from people doing chemo. And then he started doing carnivore, and he was like, it's easier. It's like much easier when I'm in a deep state of ketosis. And I started learning more from Jeff. He introduced me to Professor Seafried. And like 60 days into my carnivore journey, I got this crazy idea. I'm like, we need a documentary about carnivore diet. I don't want to talk about the science, all of that stuff. There's a lot of good people talking about that. I just want to share all of these incredible stories I'm hearing from people like Jeff, from talking to these individuals that keep emailing me that are like some of the things I'm hearing, people overcome these chronic diseases, type 2 diabetes. I just interviewed a guy yesterday. He looked in the camera and he laughed. He was like, I thought it was a lifelong sentence. 12 years ago, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. He was like, it was easy. 3 weeks carnivore diet, it's gone. I was 12 years of insulin and medication, and I just keep hearing
I
stories.
think on that note, didn't somebody just get like cure their type 1 diabetes for the first time ever on a carnivore diet? Like, am I mistaken? I swear I just heard that and somebody was publishing it. Have you
Oh,
heard
really?
that?
I don't know if I've heard that one. I haven't heard that one yet, but I've heard the type 2 diabetes. Literally, Dr. Ken Berry has 3 videos with thousands of comments on it, and people are just like left and right reversing their type 2 diabetes. And like, it wasn't even that hard. Like, just had to stop poisoning myself with carbs and sugar and seed oils, and it just kind of washes away, sort of thing. So, yeah,
And
I
Jeff,
decided to.
doesn't Jeff do a fast too while he's doing his chemo? Like that's something we haven't
Yes.
got into yet, but you know his protocol really well. So
Yeah.
he's on
So
carnivore diet. Do you want to explain kind of how he rotates his food and does his chemo with his chemo? You probably understand that better than me.
100%. Yeah, he is awesome. So he's following Professor Thomas Seyfried, who promotes metabolic therapy for cancer. And so what Jeff does is a strict carnivore diet, and uh, then he does that for a week, and then for 5 days he fasts, water only fast. And in the middle of the fast is when he gets his chemo. And the crazy thing with Jeff is he's done this, I think, 43 rounds at this point, like literally 43 times. You like when he first told me that, I'm like, how are you not like a skeleton? Like, how do you, and he'll fast and then he'll eat again and his weight just fluctuates like 4 or 5 pounds, and he's done it 43 times. It's just the weight comes right back after the fast is over. But that's what he's doing. And as Jason mentioned earlier, he's following Professor Seyfried's sort of protocol, and he's monitoring his GKI with the Keto Mojo. And so he's keeping very close track of that. Jeff is doing that, and then he's got his whole regimen that he's come up with like, I think he's got 12 things on his regimen: sleep, exercise, supplements, cold therapy, hyperbaric, uh, hyperthermia, all sorts of stuff he's doing as well. But the biggest thing that I've learned, Jason, is it's like a lot of this stuff sounds crazy. People hear I'm just eating meat. I just interviewed this gentleman. He wrote this book called Unholy Trinity: How Carbs, Sugar, and Oils Make Us Fat, Sick, and Addicted. And the biggest thing that I've learned is it's not that we're just eating meat. It's just that we're doing what we've ancestrally done literally since the start of time. There's so much evidence to show that if you look at humanity like on a football field, this entire time, we were mostly hunters and gatherers. We'd go out in the woods behind me. We'd kill a big animal. We'd feast, and we would probably fast just like Jeff did, maybe 5 days, maybe 3 days before we could find another animal. There wasn't a grocery store. We could just snap our fingers and get our foods. So we were fasting and we were feasting. We were mostly eating meat. Of course, if we came across some berries, like 3 weeks out of the year here, we get raspberries. 3 weeks, that's it. We would eat those things. We'd be insane not to, but it was mostly just meat. And so that's kind of what we're doing with this documentary is it's not, we're saying just eat meat only. That's like the magic pill. It's like, no, let's just return to what's natural for humans. All of this crazy foods we're eating nowadays, it's insanity. Like the seed oils, these things are like industrial lubricants they used on tanks in World War II. And someone looked at it and they're like, oh, that looks kind of like fat. Maybe humans would put that in their body and eat it. And we started doing it. It's just insanity. This guy was telling me, Daniel Trevor, he's like, Kerry, there's 60,000 products in the grocery store, and 59,900 of them have wheat in them, which has only been around for like 9,000 years out of the grand scheme of things. And they have modified wheat to it has this substance in it that it hits the receptors in the brain just like cocaine does. It's insane. Like some of the stuff in this book, it's just brand new to me. He was just telling me about this. He's like, they found this out like 30, 40 years ago, and it's in everything now. So much to the point now, if you go to the store and buy Twizzlers candy, the second ingredient is wheat. What? Like what? It's just crazy. So, yeah, sorry, I tend to ramble.
And
I
so
get
when
fired
you're
up about this, but
Oh no. So while you're talking, I kind of made some notes. So are you telling me that a carnivore diet fixes your snoring within a week, a TIA, which is a transient ischemic attack, if I'm correct? I had a previous career in insurance. You had heart failure. You had weight. You said you were overweight. I don't know how much overweight that is, but
100
you
pounds.
lost a lot of weight. So you've lost 100 pounds.
I've
Wow.
lost 100 pounds since my heaviest. And most of it was on carnivore. I lost a little bit on keto before I started carnivore.
Okay, and
But
then it says I got IBS down here. I got inflammation in the back, so back pain, which yeah, it's you just assume you chalk that up to getting old. And then you had depression, which is probably a big deal. So are you telling me that carnivore diet did it fix all these things, or just fix part of these things? Like, there's no way it did all of these things.
every single one of them, I guess the TIA I can't really speak to because that's like a temporary thing. When you get a TIA mini stroke, it's like having a stroke for a couple minutes versus a long, prolonged stroke that could have other side effects. But yes, everything else you've listed, gone. The depression is completely, I have no depression. I have no anxiety. And I would have given anything to just baseline, like be a normal human. I'm not baseline. I am the opposite. Like I'm full of energy, gratitude, happiness. Like I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum now. The craziest thing on that list that you mentioned was the congestive heart failure. And like people watching this right now, they're going to be like, BS. There's no way. Everything I'm talking about is in my medical records. I'm putting it in the documentary. I'm full access to my medical records. So I had that TIA mini stroke, and then I have congestive heart failure. For those that don't know, that means my heart can't keep up with the needs of my body. They measure your heart. It's called an ejection fraction. Mine was 44. They diagnosed me with cardiomyopathy, congestive heart failure. I was fatigued all the time because my heart wasn't keeping up. I'd stand up, I'd get dizzy. I was just exhausted all the time. And this took a while longer on Carnivore. I've been on it for over a year, but about 4 months ago, my wife, well, the other thing, Jason, is I've had an irregular heartbeat since birth. I was born with it. It's in my medical records. I've worn heart monitors through kindergarten, my whole life. Highly erratic heartbeat. That's gone on Carnivore. It's crazy. It's unbelievable. So I went into the doctor about 2 months ago, and they checked my heart, and they're like, your heartbeat's normal. The nurse checked it, then the doctor checked it. Then they're like, let's do more tests. We're going to do an echo on your heart, an ultrasound of your heart. I went in to do the ultrasound. That was to check the heart and to check the ejection fraction. My ejection fraction, which was 44 congestive heart failure before, is completely normal now. It's 60, which is perfect. 60 is perfect. It's not 100. You don't need 100% for ejection fraction. 60 is perfect. Mine is 60, and my doctor actually wrote in my notes, your heart is good. You have no more evidence of cardiomyopathy, which is what leads to congestive heart failure. And the only thing I did was carnivore diet.
Now, did you post these medical records or anything? Are you going to?
I did. I did a video like 3 weeks ago, and I have thousands of medical records, so I put everything I could, screenshots with dates, with all of my heart tests, including the former congestive heart failure that showed the 44 and the new one, the letter from my doctor, the new ejection fraction, the note where he said, dude, your heartbeat is normal. You have no more arrhythmia or anything. Like, my heartbeat it wasn't just like every now and then, bump, 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 bump. It was highly erratic. And I had so many health issues that I was probably at 1,000 doctor's appointments. The first thing they do is check your heart. And every single time the nurse would check my heart, she'd be like, oh my goodness, do you know you have an irregular heartbeat? And every time I'm like, yes, it's in my records. You guys tell me this every single time. And when I went this last time, she checked my heart and she didn't say anything. And I was like, is anything weird? She's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I have this irregular heartbeat. She's like, no, it's normal. She's like, I'll have the doctor double check. He checked it. It was normal. And then I had the echo and it was normal, normal, normal. So it's crazy. I wouldn't believe it if I didn't hear it. But there's lots of evidence that the heart performs much more efficiently on ketones. It prefers ketones over carbs. The best analogy I can give someone is your body's like your car, like it's a Ferrari, right? And I could put rusty, old, watered down gasoline in the Ferrari, and it's going to putter along. And that's what I did when I was eating sugar. Or you could put high octane fuel in there, the fuel that's intended for the Ferrari, and it's just going to fly. And both the heart and brain, this like isn't even disputed. It performs better while in ketosis, while powered by ketones. So I kind of wish that one of the cardiologists would have mentioned that to me at some point, because I was experimenting with keto. I never knew, like, not that I would have changed everything, or not that I ever would have imagined I would have been able to reverse the heart failure. But if one of the cardiologists had said, listen, your heart is much more efficient in ketosis, then I probably would have been more likely to stick to it in the past. I never knew that before.
That's amazing. So you've shot in this documentary, you've gotten to interview all these amazing doctors that are supporting carnivore diet. But the most amazing thing that I think that you've gotten to do is spend time with a lot of these cancer researchers. Like, you're shooting this documentary, like, have you actually gone into, have you seen where Seafried researches? Have you met his team? Like, I know that you probably can't, like, what can you share about that? And can you link the carnivore diet to supporting their research? And, like, can you share that kind of how, like, I'm sitting here with stage 4 cancer. All I'm gonna need is meat, like, and I'm at the end of my life. Like, what benefits am I gonna get? Could it actually save me? Like, what have you learned from spending so much time with these well-renowned doctors, like, that you're allowed to share?
Great question. I am so humbled and blessed that I have this opportunity. It was literally a week ago. I was at Boston College interviewing Professor Thomas Seafried. We were at his office, and his lab is next door. He's like, let's go in the lab. So we interviewed him for our documentary in the lab. And then we also got a huge opportunity that I wasn't even expecting. He's like, interview some people on my team. So we got to interview 3 other individuals that work in his lab. And some of the stuff it's just crazy. I mean, I learned so much for this documentary. The whole purpose of this documentary at first was like, listen, I overcame depression, anxiety. I want to help other people do the same. People are losing weight, which is great. Some people do it for vanity, but there's big health reasons for losing weight, of course, too. People are reversing type 2 diabetes. I never knew anything about cancer as a metabolic disease. I've lost a lot of family members to cancer, and every single one of them were told, this is a fluke. This is genetic. We just don't know why. And like, I get it. If it was me too, I would probably be like, okay, well, that's that. Now I need to deal with this. What am I going to do? You don't pay that much attention to it. But what Professor Thomas Seyfried talks about is cancer as a metabolic disease. And what his whole theory is, which goes back to Otto Warburg 100 years ago, cancer thrives on glucose. Like, there's not even an argument about it. It thrives on glucose and glutamine. And Professor Seyfried has been talking about this for 30 years. Jeff DeProsperous approached me. I did this crazy, like this whole documentary. I'm not rich. I barely getting by. We're like crowdfunding this whole deal. We're doing all these crazy events to raise funds to pay for the documentary. So to go film Professor Seyfried was expensive. We raised the funds through that crowdfunding. One of the things we did was this crazy 24-hour carnivore live stream where I stayed online for 24 hours and I interviewed everybody, Dr. Barry, Dr. Chafee, had a bunch of individuals on, and Jeff, that's how I met Jeff, our shared friend, Jeff DeProsperous, who has stage 4 cancer. And he told me, he sent me a video and he said, I want my doctors to see this, because he was a huge fan of Professor Seyfried, Dr. Chafee, Dr. Barry. He's like, those are my doctors. Those guys are helping me out. That's how he found Carnivore. And he's like, Carnivore's changed my life. Like, he's not saying like Carnivore's going to like cure my cancer, but what he does know is his chemotherapy is way more bearable while he's in deep ketosis, which is huge. He is full of energy. Jeff was diagnosed with depression before this, and his mood just drastically improved when he went carnivore. So he's like, for all of these reasons, cancer aside, and what Professor Seyfried's talking about aside, just doing this and being optimal and having my immune system just super strong, it definitely seems like it could only help my cancer. And then on top of it, my mood's better. But Jeff started telling me these things, and then he told me about Professor Seyfried. I watched some of his videos, and then I learned that he's been talking about this for 30 years. And Seyfried is like frustrated, rightfully so. Like, why aren't people listening to me? Cancer is a metabolic disease. And so, yeah, to answer your question, I interviewed him in his lab. Like, some of the questions I was asking was just to talk about the basics, because so many people watching my channel, maybe not so much your channel, they're not aware of if cancer is a metabolic disease. Seyfried's like, sure, you can get cancer from smoking cigarettes. A lot of people do. That's chronic inflammation. You can get cancer from sniffing like toxic fumes. That's chronic inflammation. I said to him, Professor Seyfried, why are these younger and younger people, 40s and 50s, getting cancer at these unprecedented rates right now? He looked at the camera and he just said, it's the food we're eating. It's like crazy, the food we're eating over the last 100 years, seed oils, sugar. And what he sums it up as is we're eating highly inflammatory foods. Our bodies are in a state of chronic inflammation. When you have chronic inflammation, it damages the mitochondria. You end up with cell division out of control. You end up with cancer. And so I firmly believe that most cancers in the world nowadays, back in the day, maybe more so smoking, but nowadays it's just from the foods we're eating. Most people walking around, 9 out of 10 people, I learned this from the documentary, 9 out of 10 people have poor metabolic health. Most people you look at nowadays are chronically inflamed from the foods they're eating. So that was one of the big things I learned from Seyfried, and I'm happy to talk about more because I learned a lot from some of the people on his staff as well that are doing work for him.
Yeah, that's truly amazing. I'm so jealous. I'd love to go spend time with the Professor Seyfried. Like, the guy's a legend. I've read all of his research and he's got quite the team, and like, it's all legitimate. And actually, something interesting I just learned, Otto Warburg was the one that originally discovered that cancer is a metabolic disease, but he was actually funded by Hitler, and he was actually a Jew apparently. And so
Wow.
I've been reading into his history, and that's the reason all this research was lost. Professor Seyfried kind of went back and dusted off the old book, if you will, and said, well, let's just give this a minute and go back and check this out. But they were making major advancements in, not unfortunately, Nazi Germany at the time under funding from Adolf Hitler. And I guess that kind of makes sense why that could disappear pretty quickly following World War II, like all the death and destruction that came behind it. But Otto Warburg had a really bad rap behind his name in his own community, because whenever all the Jews were being taken to the concentration camps, Hitler held him out as a hero, as a Jew, basically, to try it, because he was making these huge advancements in cancer research. So that's kind of a neat little background there. So, okay, so you're getting all these benefits from carnivore diet. Tell me what it's like when you're eating all this food, like how are you helping people go from the standard American diet to this carnivore diet? Like what, like this must be torture. Like I know going from the standard American diet just to keto diet, having the odd vegetable. I'm practically carnivore now, but it's torture. But how are you helping people do it? How do you do it? Let's explain that.
Yeah, it's very tough because that addiction to sugar and carbs is so strong for so many people. The thing that's frustrating for me, Jason, is it's hard to get started, but once you are doing it, this isn't me bragging or anything. Everyone says this. It's literally the easiest thing in the world. It's what your body's intended to do. I don't think about it anymore. The first 2 or 3 weeks you're adapting, people are going to get diarrhea. People are going to suffer. They're going to, some of them might get headaches. They're going to have problems. But for me, I'm just like, sorry, tough it out, buddy, because like that's what I said to myself anyways. I'm like, for 42 years I ate horrible garbage food. My body was addicted to sugar. Sugar lights up on the brain like cocaine does. It's a highly addictive drug, but we've normalized it, and grandma gives it to you in cookies, so it's just kind of normal. But I'm like, it's going to be tough to overcome this addiction. But once you get over that, it's usually for people it's like a week or 2 weeks. That goes away if you do it strict. That's my biggest advice for people too. Do it strict. Some people will be like, I'm doing carnivore, but I still have my Diet Coke or my artificial sweeteners. And if you have a little taste of that sugar, your body's going to still crave it, and it's going to make it unbearable for you. You just quit it. You quit it all. Usually like 2 weeks, 10 days or so, that those sugar cravings will start to go away when your body's adapted and it switches over, and the switch goes over and you're burning that fat for fuel. It's amazing. You feel great. All these things start happening for everyone. The inflammation goes away. The biggest thing that goes away for so many people that I never knew about going into this is the brain fog. I knew I had brain fog before. I would have trouble finding my words. My wife and I have 4 girls. We'd be like, I'd want to say, go empty the dishwasher. And I'd be like, go empty the turny thing with the, what is it called? And I could never figure out my words. But most people watching this probably think, yeah, I got some brain fog too. But there's this saying that I absolutely love is, you can't see the fog until you're out of it. I knew I had brain fog, but when I got on carnivore and I'm burning the ketones, you get out of that fog and you just think with this different level of clarity. Your cognition, like reading books, just taking in information, it's so much smoother and easier than when you're burning that junk sugar for fuel. So once you get into it, it's a lot easier, but it is hard for the first 2 weeks. The other thing, this is my advice for people, don't approach this as, I'm going to do this all meat diet for the rest of my life. This is how I couldn't do it that way. I never would have done it. This is how I approached it. I said, I am so sick. I have so many issues. I'm going to just do an elimination diet for 30 days. Day 31, I can go back to eating birthday cake and pizza. But for 30 days, I'm going to eliminate all of these poisons and seed oils and high fructose corn syrup and boxed foods with ingredients I can't pronounce. I'm going to cut those out for 30 days. And ultimately, what I ended up doing was just eating beef, butter, bacon, eggs. But it's a lot more palatable. It's a lot easier to stomach to tell yourself I'm doing an elimination diet versus I'm just eating only meat. And man, the 30 days goes by quick. It goes by quick. It's hard the first day or two, but before you know it, it's like snap of a finger, 30 days is over. So
That's amazing. I know when I'm switching, or when I've gone to carnivore diet and then I went to basically carnivore with a little bit of vegetables because we have a big garden, and when everything's in season, we've always gardened. It's so hard not to eat the vegetables. But it kind of goes back to what you were saying, like back to hunter gatherers. Like if something's in season, you'd eat it for a short period of time while it was in season, but that was it. But it is like when I eat vegetables in my diet and I spend a majority of my time not doing it, I do feel worse, to be honest with you. I feel in my gut. I feel inflammation coming on. It's pretty amazing. So I
right.
got to wonder, some people, so what do you say to people that say, well, everybody's genetically different and everybody should have a different style of diet? Is there any truth to that? Or is everything that you're seeing, everybody's getting significant benefit from carnivore diet?
I mean, I think as humans, we all have some slight differences, but I think overall we're pretty similar. There's certain things like, for example, carnivore diet, losing weight, I think is maybe easier for men than women. Age, genetics, I think it plays a small role in it. But overall, I think we're pretty darn similar. The thing with the vegetables is that was something that was hard for me to wrap my brain around too. If you can grow your own vegetables like you are, Jason, and you can tolerate them fine, that's great. Like more power to you. My whole thing is most of the commercially available produce you can get nowadays, It's crap. It's like, first of all, there's pesticides in it, and people, they wash it off under some water on the sink and they think that did it. They're like, that pesticides permeates inside the vegetables. People are eating it. There's like evidence, like leaky gut, all of these things coinciding with the increased uptake of pesticides. Then there's glyphosate. There's now forever chemicals in the pesticides. So it's like such a departure from what's natural from humans. If you can get all of that out of there and you can grow your own stuff clean, the other problem is most produce nowadays, there's been a lot of stuff coming out on this recently. I just find it fascinating. Like, if you eat an apple today, which is like this big, a real true apple used to be like this big. It's been modified so much. An apple today that people are like, oh, it's so good for you. It's like a candy piece of sugar. I eat that apple. An hour later, I'm hungry again because my blood sugars are going crazy from eating it because it's been modified so much to taste like a piece of candy. All of that aside, let's say take like a strawberry, for example, nowadays, it's modified and it's this big. All of that aside, though, it's grown in soil that's deficient. You used to have soil like that our grandparents, Jason, would have ate a strawberry. It would have had some good minerals and vitamins and nutrients in it. There's like 1/7 the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients in a strawberry nowadays than there was for our grandparents because the soil is devoid and deficient because they used to regenerate. The cow would eat the grass and it would poop and they would regenerate. And now they're just spraying glyphosate and chemicals and they're chemical farming and soil's turning to dust. They put more chemicals on it. There's barely any nutrients in these things. So when I interviewed Dr. Ken Berry, one of the funniest things he said, which was also true, he's like, salad is such a waste of time. It's basically crunchy water with glyphosate on it. And when you think about that, that was the main thing I used to eat before doing carnivore. I'm like, I'm going to eat healthy keto. I'd eat salad. The amount of energy, calories, whatever I would get from a serving of salad in my stomach, the amount of energy it would take my stomach to even process that would negate any energy I was getting from it in the first place. And then that doesn't even take into account the fact that there's probably pesticides on there and glyphosate on there, all these other things. It's like, it's a lose-lose situation when we're talking about just a salad. People love salad. They actually love the croutons and the cheese and the dressing, and the dressing's full of seed oils and other unnatural garbage on there. So those are some of my arguments against vegetables. But if you can, my thing that I'm advocating for is just a proper human diet. And if you can eat proper vegetables that don't have glyphosate and pesticides on them, more power to you. I don't have anything against it.
I'm gonna throw something out there though. I have something new I've been learning is Dr. Anthony Shafee talks about vegetables. They naturally, and I didn't know this, but I forget, chemo's wrecked my brain, so I'm bad at recalling things. I got the brain fog you talked about earlier. But vegetables naturally produce their own deterrents to deter pests and animals from eating them. And so maybe you can get into that a little bit, because I've heard a few podcasts that like people really rip vegetables because, like, for example, celery, if you're harvesting it, you have to cover your skin because they naturally produce some toxin that if it's on your skin and you have too much exposure, the sun will, or like you'll bubble up and blister and pus, and you're eating that and taking that in, like your body has to process that. And I don't know, something like 80 or to 150 natural poisons and eat different vegetables. I don't know. What do you know about that? Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, it's crazy. So all of the arguments I just listed, you're right. I didn't even list one of the big ones. Dr. Chafee talks about it. He's done several presentations where he's like, plants are trying to kill you. It sounds extreme. It sounds crazy, but that's exactly what they're trying to do. Like, every species on this planet is going to defend itself in some way. A plant's just sitting there on the ground. The only way it can defend itself is by toxins in the plant that discourage other things from eating it. And those things evolve over time too, and get worse and worse. And yeah, there's certain toxins in plants that are causing issues for people. Now, you look at it, like the incidence of IBS, leaky gut, all of these stomach issues, a lot of them coincide with people eating more and more plants. And the thing is, when we're talking about eating plants, right, people always think of the vegetables like lettuce and broccoli and all of that. It's all true. But if you go to the grocery store right now, there's 60,000 products on the shelf. And I eat beef, butter, bacon, eggs, like 5. So like 59,995 of those, although they're in boxes, those are plants. Those come from plants. If you're eating a bowl of cereal, where did that come from? It didn't come from them chopping up meat and processing meat. They're processed plants. So all of those things, in one way or another, are plants. Chafee talks about that beautifully. He's done several videos on it. The other thing he said that I love is, listen, you can eat a fatty ribeye and you can literally get every single, it's the most nutritionally dense food in the world. You get everything you need from a fatty ribeye. You have no deficiency. And I'm proof of that. For 420 days now, I didn't eat only ribeyes. I wish I could say that, but I've only eaten meat. And for the last like 6 months, I do no supplementation. I haven't even been doing electrolytes the last 6 months. I haven't been doing any vitamins, nothing. I just had my blood work done. It's fantastic. I'm not deficient in anything. You cannot say that for plants. If you eat solely plants, you will die. You have to supplement. You're not getting everything from plants. So yeah, there's just so many things. It's such a tricky thing with the plants because we have these social norms we've grown up with. Like, you got to eat your vegetables. Meat's going to give you a heart attack. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And so many of these things, they're so false. But I get it. Like, going into carnivore, I was the same way. Like, what am I going to do about vegetables? They're so important. But the truth of the matter is they're not. If they were so important, then how come I can eat a fatty ribeye, eat only that, get everything I need, and not only that, absolutely thrive and overcome all of those things I just mentioned to you. And like performance wise, energy wise, it's through the roof. It's like unbelievable. I get people asking me all the time, like, well, aren't you going to bring back broccoli or avocado or this? And I'm like, why? I get pissed when people say it. I'm like, why? Why would I? I'm literally getting everything I need from the meat. I get it. Like, humanity has this incessant need for variety. I'm getting everything I need from the meat. I'm absolutely thriving. I was miserable before, so I'm not going to mess with it. I don't need broccoli. Like, the other thing too is just, I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but last thing real quick, these vegetables, right? A lot of them have the toxins in them. A lot of them we boil. Like, oh my God, one of the most disgusting things for me is like boiled broccoli. So maybe there was some toxins in the broccoli. Well, now you got rid of it because you boiled it. But now what are you left with? You also like got rid of any of the nutrients or vitamins that are in the water now, and you're eating this mushy broccoli with nothing left in it anymore. It's so backwards.
It's absolutely backwards. And yeah, like I can attest that I'm primarily carnivore, and I do, my wife makes amazing vegetable dishes, and all of a sudden I eat it, like I don't feel as good. And I think something really important to point out that you'd said is that ribeye has got everything you need. And when you got cancer and you're struggling with your weight, you could drink an ensure that they give you and like gladly go for it if you think that's best. But I mean, that's just going to grow your cancer. You're just going to get glucose spikes. Or you could just go home and make the best, most delicious ribeye you've ever had in your life. Like, pick one.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of really important to point out when you're fighting cancer. And here's my next question. When you go places, like if I had a business meeting at a restaurant, or on Mother's Day, I'm going somewhere, and then they order Thai food, and like the dressing I ate the beef and the vegetables, but I didn't have any of the rice or I don't even know what you call those noodles or what they're supposed to be. I didn't eat any of that, but I had a major glucose spike just from the sauces on it. Like, I even took a paper towel and tried to pat it off, you know?
Yeah.
So that's one thing I've been struggling with. So I'm sure other people are too. How do you cope with societal norms when you go out places? Like, you're just gonna, like, I gotta go meet people. Like, I'm going out golfing. I'm on the golf course. Like, now I'm in places where there's just junk. So what do I take with me? What do I do? Like, how do you get through those things and not be weird and not be a drag on society or your friends or your family? How do you
Right.
manage that?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is probably one of the trickier parts of carnivore. But I've managed it okay. One of the things I'll say is this: like, for a lot of people watching this, are doing the standard American diet. They come at this from the framework of the standard American diet, where you're constantly eating. You're eating 3 meals a day, and then you're like, before I would breakfast is the most important meal of the day, right? I'd eat that, and then an hour later, whoa, I'm hungry again. Why? Because of my blood sugars. I had a little bit of sugar for breakfast. Now I got to have an apple. Now I got to have a granola bar. It's not like that. Once you get into deep carnivore, I did a stretch of 60 days where I would only eat 1 meal a day, and I wasn't starving. I wasn't uncomfortable. I ate a huge fatty ribeye, sometimes two, try to get like 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds of meat. I did that for 60 days and I wasn't hungry. You eat a lot when you're eating fatty meat, it fills you up. It's so hard to describe to people that are doing standard American diet, but you eat less. So that definitely helps. So for me, I'll plan it. Like, I'm going to go golfing this afternoon. I'm going to eat a big fatty ribeye before I go. Um, Going out to eat is so tricky because every those noodles you mentioned, the sauce, I guarantee you, it's all going to have sugar in it. They're going to put whatever is in there to just kind of continue that addiction for you. So like, if I go to if I'm fortunate enough to go to like a steak restaurant, I basically tell them, and this isn't even a lie, I'm like, I'm allergic to oils. If I've come in contact with seed oil since being on carnivore, mistakenly, and it messes me up so bad. Like I could tell instantly. So I'll just tell people straight up, I'm allergic to seed oils. I want a steak or a burger. I want it cooked on the grill, just fire and meat. Don't put any seasonings, any spices, anything on it. The other thing is sometimes we'll bring food. So like for Easter, we had it at Aunt's house. I made up a big, wow, it was like a big beef roast. I slow cooked it and I brought that with. Bacon is a very good friend. We'll always have a ton of bacon made up, and my wife has the purse bacon, so there's always some emergency bacon in the purse if we need some. But it is a tricky part. It is a little bit harder to navigate, but I guess it just requires more planning. And the other thing too is like I said, we eat a lot less, and like I've done fast too. Like our buddy Jeff, the biggest fast I did so far was an 8-day fast. Jeff had to do an 8-day fast. It's like, I'm going to do it with you. Let's go. It's good. I'm not just doing it to pat me on the back. Like it's really good for me. Ancestrally, we probably fasted a lot. I felt incredible. Like I got so much out of that, but I never would have been able to do that on the standard American diet. I've tried fasting on the standard American diet. I was miserable. So that's another option too. Like if I ever had some big event I couldn't do, I'd be like, I'm just going to fast for 24 hours. Like 24 hours is nothing to fast for when you're in carnivore and you're in deep ketosis already. It's pretty easy to do. Not the first week in carnivore, but once you're doing it for a while, it's a lot easier to do.
So what meals, like I've heard you talk about a stew that everybody loves. Like what are your go-to like
Yeah.
carnivore meals that you have laying around or that you eat that are your favorite?
Yeah, good question. Every day, almost every day, I'll have bacon and eggs for breakfast, or eggs with ground beef. Sounds gross. I never would have loved it before. Man, I can cook up some mean ground beef. You get a craving for it after a while. We have a thing in my house. My whole family's carnivore now, by the way, which is just crazy to me. My wife's on day 50, I think. All my 4 daughters are doing it as well. One of my daughters is ketovore, but she's mostly carnivore. We have this thing we call it the Power Bowl. It's Dr. Barry, all these carnivore doctors, they talk about getting beef, butter, bacon, eggs. The Power Bowl is something my daughter and I came up with. It is those things, but all together in one meal. So we'll scramble up eggs, bacon. Actually, we'll do the bacon first in like a cast iron skillet. We'll cut up little chunks of it, and then we'll put scrambled eggs into that, and then we'll make ground beef in another one and put that in there, and then add a little bit of butter. We call it the Power Bowl. It is fantastic. Like you eat that thing and you're just jumping out of the chair with energy. You can make a ton of it up too, and then have it in the fridge cold and eat it later. That's been a go-to over the last year. Otherwise, it's normally scrambled eggs, ground beef or bacon for breakfast, one meal. I won't eat lunch, and then later in the afternoon or for dinner, if I'm lucky, it'll be a big fatty ribeye. That's my favorite. Ground patties is another one we have all the time. We'll just throw them in the air fryer. We got tons of ground beef frozen patties in the fridge. And then the beef stew you mentioned, that's been another one, like Costco, Sam's Club. You can cut it up yourself too. They sell stew meat, which is so simple. It's just beef, but we put it in the slow cooker, salt and a stick of butter, and you put it on there low and slow. Like I like to do it at night before I go to bed. You wake up the next day. We had this, Jason, at Easter. I brought this for Easter. I've been carnivore for 2 Easters now. The second Easter, I brought this beef stew thing. And my dad, who's not carnivore, he was making fun of me. He's like, don't waste your time. Nobody's going to eat that garbage. You got to put onions in it, spices in it. No one's going to like it. No joke. I brought that to Easter. Everyone, I had 5 people come up to me afterwards, like, I got to get your recipe. And I laughed at him. I'm like, recipe? I'm like, it's literally beef, salt, and water. And I add a stick of butter in at the end. There's nothing in there. But when you slow cook meat with butter like that, it's incredible. It's so good. The trick with that too is you put water in the slow cooker, but just halfway. You leave like half the meat out, and it forms almost like a crust around the meat and the flavor on it. It's fantastic. So we do that probably once or twice a week. Slow cooked beef stew meat, ground beef patties. You get into like a rhythm where it's very liberating. There's like a food freedom when you do carnivore for a while, because before this it was, oh my God, what are we going to eat? What are the sides? What are the spices? What are the sauces? Now it's just like I eat a ribeye, I'm done. It's like I have so much more freedom, so much more time worrying about thinking about what I'm going to eat all the time.
So when you say a stick of butter, do you mean like a big block of butter or just like a little like quarter of a block of butter? You know what I mean?
A full-on stick, yeah, lots of butter. But the one I get from Costco, I don't know how many pounds it is, but it's a ton. Like it's a big thing of meat. But with that said, my biggest tip for anyone that's thinking about carnivore right now is it should be called fativore. It's all about getting the fat. There's a lot of people that start carnivore and they're failing, or they're tired, or they don't know why. And every single time it's because they're not getting enough fat. They're like, oh, I ate only animal products. I ate just chicken breast. Well, there's no fat on chicken breast. You got to get the fat. That's why ribeye is the best. if you have like tenderloin or New York strip and there's not a lot of fat on it, you can supplement with butter. You can cut a little, like I'll sometimes have a strip steak. I'll have a whole thing of butter next to me. I'll just be slicing it off. I'll almost have a slice of butter with everything. Sounds gross to people that aren't initiated, but when you get into carnivore, your body starts craving. That's your fuel. Your body will start craving that fat. You start getting the fat too. It's crazy what happens. Like your skin clears up, and like for my daughters, their acne, hormonal issues, all that stuff starts regulating, and it's all just the fat. Like our brains are made of fat, and a lot of people are frankly deficient in it because we've been told the wrong information. We've been hiding from fat and doing low fat for so many years. You do that low fat for long enough, your hormones become dysregulated, your testosterone goes down, your sleep gets messed up, your immune system gets weak. It's like it's all tied back to the fat. You start getting the fat back in, all those things start improving pretty quickly.
Well, I'm doing something coming up here. Maybe you can provide me with some tips and everybody listening, because a lot of cancer patients are probably like me. Like I got half a stomach, cut out 7 centimeters of my esophagus. I was down to 120 pounds. Right now I'm hanging in around 130, 135. But June 1st to June 18th, and I haven't said this online or anything, I'm doing an 18-day fast. And actually, Jeff and I have been texting. He says he's going to join me. So my plan, though, because I can't lose weight, like I'm 130 pounds right now. So my plan is to go to the butcher. I can buy a bag of bones with the marrow in the middle, like cut
Yeah.
open and exposed. So when my pressure cooker, I make homemade bone broth. I just add salt, nothing else, just the bone marrow and salt. And then when it's done, then I make a cup and I add 4 teaspoons of butter to the cup, and I'm gonna drink it. So I'm gonna have bone broth and butter like around the clock to make sure I don't lose weight. And I don't know, I've never tried this before, but Jordan Peterson, his daughter, they're both carnivores and had significant results. They cut up animal fat, and I don't know if it's pork or beef. Maybe you can help me somehow. And then they're frying it and eating it like bacon. Have you tried it, or do you have advice? Like, how do I do this? Because I need the fat intake because it's
Right.
not on my body. Look at me, I'm a stick. So
Right.
I gotta put the fat in my mouth so I don't drop any weight here. So can you please give me
Yeah.
where do I go from here?
Man, congratulations on doing that 18-day fast coming up. I just talked to Jeff for the first time in a while. We email every now and then, but I actually talked to him yesterday, and he was talking about I got to get in one of these bigger fasts like that. So that's incredible. And he was talking similar. We were talking with his buddy Dwight about doing a fast, but just only having fat, like you said, or bone broth and fat. There's some incredible stuff here. When I was talking to Jeff yesterday, I'm like, this is uncharted territory, really. Like a lot of people haven't talked about this. It really is like, because we were saying, like Jeff was like, well, I'll be in deep ketosis if I still have the fat. I'll be getting some of the benefits of fasting, but maybe not autophagy, mitophagy. And then Dwight's like, I don't know. And Dwight's the dude. Like he knows everything. He's like, I don't. He's like, the oncologist should know this, but it's such uncharted territory. We don't know. I think it's an excellent strategy. Like it's only going to help you. It's all about the fat. What you mentioned, like making your own bone broth, that is like some of the best stuff in the world for you. I recently started doing that myself as well. So when you do the bone broth, did you say you leave the marrow in and do it like in the pressure cooker with the marrow in there still?
Yeah, the bones come, they're like cut up, like they're round and they're
Yeah.
just like cut. Like, so if you had a bone, they just cut it like this in like 2 inch pieces.
Right.
And I just put it in my pressure cooker and I salt the heck out of it. And then I hit 2 hours and it takes like 45 minutes. Like I fill it up with water to the max line.
Yeah.
And I buy 1 pack per pressure cooker and I fill it up to the max line. I hit 2 hours on high and I just leave it. And it takes like 45 minutes to heat up. So it almost takes 3 hours and it's done. And then it's done. It's perfect. And like the bone marrow is like falling out of the bone. It's all now, you can tell it's all in the thing. Another thing somebody told me was to ask the butcher to cut the bone the other way so that the marrow is exposed. And
Yeah.
then what you can do is put butter on the top and then bake it in the oven. And apparently high-end restaurants actually serve that. And then you eat the bone marrow. Like, do you have any experience with that? Is that still carnivore? Like,
Oh yeah, dude, that is one of the best things you can do. This is like I've been carnivore 420 days. I'm constantly learning things. About 3 weeks ago, I was in South Carolina filming for the documentary. We filmed this woman named Mimi. This lady had Parkinson's, full-blown stroke, rheumatoid arthritis. She had a blood infection that got into her bones. She almost died. She was in the hospital for like 6 weeks. She was bedridden. She's about ready to hike a 500-mile hike. She's carnivore. She's absolutely thriving. She's like I looked at her medical records. I'm like, this is unbelievable. You have Parkinson's. But she made us this meal, and it included bone marrow. And it was the first, I had bone marrow once before. I was at this fancy restaurant and they had bone marrow butter, and it was legit. It was really good. And then with Mimi and my daughters were there too. We all tried it. That is like undeniably like one of the best things you could eat, that bone marrow and the fat. I think some people they'll roast it and then they'll eat the bone marrow and then they'll put the bones in and do it. But I don't see any issue doing it either way. I tried it once and I did it like you with the bone marrow in there in the pressure cooker, and it was just fine. But then afterwards, I was like, maybe I'm going to smoke it and just eat it, because my daughter too, she's crazy. She's 16. She was vegan for many years, but she had the bone marrow, and she's like, Dad, I swear, after I ate that, I feel like my skin just feels like rejuvenated or something like that. There's like collagen and fat, like there's all sorts of good stuff in there. So I've seen it cut the other way too. The butcher shop I go, they cut it the way you do, but I've seen it on like YouTube where they do it and roast it. But that's some of the best stuff you could do. That 18-day fast is incredible. Like, I don't have any other advice. Like, I would do the same thing. I would stick to with Jeff as close as you can, because no joke, his buddy Dwight is incredible. Jeff's got a lot of really good doctors as well too. They're kind of good in their specialties, but some of them are just laser focused on this thing, and Dwight really knows his stuff. So a lot of the fasting stuff with Jeff is guided by Dwight. And I don't know, I always like to say, like, if I had stage 4 cancer, what would I do right now? The first person I would call would be Jeff or Dwight. Like, what's new? What are you doing? Or Seafried if I could, but a lot of the research is coming from Seafried, and they're just kind of compiling it all together. So
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I'm part of me is really looking forward to this fast. It's kind of sad because my immune therapy that I've been taking, I've had no change in cancer now since scan almost a year ago, July. So I've been on this immune therapy for, this will be 11 months. And let's hypothetically say this fast, my cancer shrinks for the first time in 11 months. The oncologists and the cancer people are going to go, oh, the immune therapy's working.
yeah,
It had nothing to do with your fast. So I'm not saying this fast will work, but I I'm pretty pumped for it. I got really high expectations because I got a scan June 18th. So I thought June 1st is just a round number. So I'm going to do 18 days on animal fats. And I told Jeff, and I said, do it with me. He's like, yeah, all right, we're doing it.
that's
So I don't
awesome.
know.
I,
It's
I
so sad that the oncologist wouldn't say, yeah, it's the fast, if it
yeah.
is.
I talked to Jeff yesterday, and he had a similar story about how some of his numbers changed, and they disregard what he's doing and eating. And there's like a huge impact if you're eating a bunch of sugar or you're completely abstaining from it. But that fasting thing, it's incredible too that you're doing it with Jeff, because I think that's a huge help just to have someone. It's a huge help for Jeff. It's a huge help for you to have someone you're kind of partnering with. But I did an 8-day one with Jeff. And like I said, like, I'm not trying to get patted on the back, but I got more benefit out of that than anything. By day 7 or 8, man, I felt incredible. It's so counterintuitive. It's different for you. Obviously, you just went through the esophageal surgery and all this stuff. So I totally get it. And the weight and everything. It was easier for me because I had more weight and fat going into it and kind of prime up. But I love that strategy of doing it with the fat, because your ketones number should be amazing. And what everyone says is it's fat. It's all about fat. People screw that up so much, and you're literally just eating fat. Like, I'm like tempted to jump in there with you guys and see what it's doing, because I've thought about that. Like, if I were to just eat fat, what would happen? It sounds so crazy and so backwards, but that's where all the goodness is. And everyone I know, I've talked to so many carnivores that have ever had any issues is because they're not getting enough fat. A couple people I talked to, for example, oh, I wake up at 3 a.m, I'm wide awake. Then they did a bunch of tests on themselves and like, oh shit, it was because I wasn't getting enough fat. They up the fat, the sleep comes back. It's like everything is tied back to that fat. So
Does this mean you're doing it with us? Is that a proposal? You want to do it? Let's do it.
when is it? 2 weeks from now?
June 1st to June 18th. You got a few more weeks to get your mind ready. Like, it's just animal fat and butter and broth. Come on.
I really, really want to commit. The only hesitation is not because I'm a big baby, but we're going to Hack Your Health, and it starts June 1st. And I'm interviewing all of these doctors. So it would be good to be in ketosis. But we have this huge expensive meetup at a Brazilian steakhouse. And then we have a live stream we're having with all of the doctors, including Dr. Baker and Dr. Chafee, where the whole purpose of it's carnivore dinner, and they're getting all these steaks. So, man,
But
I'm gonna think
when you back, you could join us in when you're back. You're not
when
trying
I'm
to fake
back. Yeah,
cancer. When you
yeah.
back,
The event is from like the 1st to the 3rd, and then we're interviewing a couple people. So it's probably, I think I'm back like the 8th.
you could join us for 10 days at the
10
end.
days, dude. That's a good idea too, because the last one I did was 8, and this would top it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do it. Let's do it. I'm committing to it
let's
right
do it.
now. I'm gonna do
All
it.
right,
On
I'm
the well, let me write
excited.
it down to make sure I don't mess this up. On the 8th.
June 10th to June 8th, or what? June 8th to June 18th. 10
8
days.
to 18. Let's go. Yeah, let's do
Let's
it.
go.
It'll be awesome,
That's
man. We can like
exciting.
text with each other, support each other, whatever. One thing I was saying to Jeff, and there's something to this. When I did that 8-day, Jeff recently did, I think he did a 14 or a 10. There's something, Jason, like when you say
10.
you're going to do 18, let's say you say right now you're going to do 5, right? When you get to day 4.5, your brain is like, oh, I'm going to eat soon. And it ramps it up. But if you didn't have that expectation of day 5 and it was really day 10, it doesn't happen. And it's like, you could go on. So when I did that 8-day one with Jeff, my body at the last like couple hours, like, oh, let's go. We're going to eat. But I swear to God, if I didn't know it was day 8 and I was going to go to day 10, I could have easily gone to day 10. When you get in that zone, it's weird, man. There's almost on day 7 and 8 of that last one, it was almost like this euphoric feeling. You just feel this zen. You just feel fantastic. And I did pull-ups every day. And subsequently, every day I was able to do more, which is just nuts. Like, how is that possible? On day 8, I could do more than on day 1, on more than on day 7. Everything in the world is backwards and nothing makes sense. I don't understand the science behind it, but there's some craziness with fasting.
So what's better then? Let's just draw the line here. What's better, carnivore diet or fasting? Which one had a greater impact in the short period of time?
I'd say fasting, 100%. And I would say this. I think the reason carnivore is so effective is because it's the closest we can get the body to fasting, but you still got to eat something. Like, I did a fast on the standard American diet years ago. I did a 5-day, and it was brutal because I had to get into ketosis. But once I got into ketosis, I felt amazing. Like, the depression and stuff started going away, and I started noticing other things. But I had to eat again, so I ate on day 6. When I first started carnivore and I started feeling good, I distinctly remember back, I'm like, wow, this carnivore thing feels much like when I fasted that one time for 5 days back in the day. It's very sort of similar. Your body, you're just given, like, think about this on the standard American diet. When I'm eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, all those snacks, it takes an incredible amount of energy for the stomach to process all that garbage, right? It's like a lot of energy. You have a finite amount of energy. And when you're doing carnivore, it's like ribeye, meat, and it just goes right through. Like, it's getting all the nutrients out of there. So you have all this excess energy. So in some ways, I think carnivore is very close to fasting, but fasting's legit, man. If I could eat nothing for the rest of my life and not die, I'd be like, let's fast forever. I felt so good fasting with Jeff.
Well, don't cows have like 4 stomachs to process grass or vegetable? They're basically vegetarians, right? But they
Right.
process all the bad things out of it so that way by the time it gets to the meat in the body, you're eating pure food again, aren't you? Isn't that the way that works?
100%. And that's the reason a lot of people do better on beef or ruminant animals that have multi-chambered stomachs. Like you were mentioning Michaela Peterson, she only does ruminant meats because if you eat, like, I got chicken here, right? If I ate one of these chickens, well, they ate some grain. The grain had some toxins in it. Chicken's got one stomach. I'm going to ingest some of those toxins through the meat. But exactly like you said with the cow eats some grain or something that's got some junk in it. By the time it goes through those 4 stomachs and you eat that meat, it's filtered out most of the junk. You're basically getting the cleanest food you can get. I think that's the key to carnivore is you're eating as clean as humanly possible, low inflammation. There's like no inflammation. It's like literally as clean as you can. I don't think there's anything cleaner you could eat. Maybe a vegetable you're growing your own garden in rich soil and stuff like that. But other than that, I don't think there's anything better.
I think you're right. We're coming up to an hour here. How can people find you? I guess let's make sure we get that in there so I don't forget.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. You can find me. We have a website. It's healinghumanity.movie, and you can find me on YouTube. It's kind of weird. I haven't changed it yet, but my YouTube channel is Homestead How. Homestead How. It's one word. Been doing homesteading videos for years, but for the last year, I don't think I've done any. It's all I'm obsessed with carnivore. Like when you see this kind of healing and these stories from other individuals, it's become my mission, my purpose in life now to get the word out. The whole thing with this documentary is I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm not telling anyone to eat carnivore. I'm just sharing stories. Like Jeff DeProsperous, his story, he decided to go carnivore. This is what happened. I decided to go carnivore. My buddy Bill Knott, he's 700 pounds, stuck in Alaska for 4 years. He's been on carnivore now. He's coming up on a year. He's down 200 pounds. He's going to leave his house for the first time in 4 years, eating a proper human diet. So that's the whole goal with this is we're just sharing the stories of individuals doing this. It's completely crowdfunded. If you want to like buy a shirt or anything like that, every single penny from all of that, I'm not taking a paycheck. It's all going towards the documentary. Just filming Seafried last week was such a blessing. I was all from crowdfunding, and like I said, I don't get a paycheck. I'm donating my own money into it. It's really a passion project. It's like a principled thing with me because I'm kind of pissed off and fired up that the reason I think I was so sick for so long, whether it was intentional or not, it was just greed and money and everything pointing to eating more sugar, eating more junk food. It's big food followed by big pharma with medication, followed by big medicine, and the circle just keeps going. So I wanted to make sure we do this documentary and not have any money or bias or anything like that in there. So it's going to be entirely crowdfunded, which is pretty awesome.
You also have a link for cancer patients or something too.
Yeah, thank you. I forgot to mention that. Completely free, 100%. If you go to healinghumanity.movie and you click on cancer, we have a cancer action plan. I put that together with Jason and my shared friend, Jeff DeProsperous. It has Jeff's cancer regimen. The biggest thing I've learned about cancer from talking to Jeff and many other individuals is oftentimes you're diagnosed and you're left hopeless without a plan. This was to try to give people a plan, like not tell you what to do. Maybe you got to do chemo. Maybe you got to do radiation. Everybody's different, but number one, people should have metabolic therapy at least as an option that they can decide not to do or do. Most people aren't told about that. So we talk about metabolic therapy on the Cancer Action Plan. We have links to Professor Seafried's work. We have videos from cancer thrivers that have decided to use metabolic therapy. And we have a petition there. The petition is we're trying to get 1 million signatures to include metabolic therapy. So if you're diagnosed with cancer, that they tell you about it. We just want people to know about it, just have it as an additional tool in the toolbox. So that's completely free. It's at healinghumanity.movie. You just click on cancer.
That's awesome. That's truly amazing. So yeah, everybody hop over to Homestead How and check out Kerry. I've been following him for forever and his stuff's just amazing. I can't stop watching his videos. And anyhow, yeah, I think that's probably good enough for today, Kerry. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we sign off?
No, I don't, but I just want to thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I love what you're doing. I really enjoyed your interview with Professor Seafried the other day, and I'm looking forward to fasting with you on the 8th to the 18th. Let's go. This is going to be fun. We'll have to do some more video. We'll have to do like a live stream or something. We do an update.
Yeah, let's definitely do it. Yeah, and because Jeff, and then we could, I don't know if we could 3-way stream it to all 3 channels or something.
Yeah,
That'd be sweet.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome. All right, guys. Thank you so much, Kerry, for helping me out with this today. And thanks, everybody, for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll see you guys on the next video.